Vern Kyle here. Today we will be preparing the mono berm for the Gomaco trimming head. The top of this berm has been watered and packed and has passed the density test. The first step will be to cut the top of the berm at 2% toward the street, and we will be leaving 2 centimeters for the Gomaco to trim off. On the next step, the grade crew will draw a paint line so I can cut the notch. Then we will clean up behind the Gamako by taking away the trimmings. I'm going to pick up the pace here a little bit to 4 times speed as I do a voiceover. As you can see, the string line is set up, so that makes it a little easier for the grade crew to measure these numbers. Rob is actually out in front of me showing me these numbers, passing a valve there. And as I'm cutting these numbers, there's a 5, there's another 5, a 10. And as I'm cutting these numbers, I am holding on 2%. As you can see, I've got the camera mounted on the outside of the grater. There's another 3. Another 5, and as you do this, you'd keep the high points in mind. In the next clip, I'm going to slow things down to normal speed, and I'm going to get out of the grater and talk more about how to hold this 2% as you're cutting these numbers. There's a bit of a trick to it, and it'd be a good topic to talk about. Okay, now while I was cutting that berm, I stopped the grater, got out of the grater and brought my camera with me. I wanted to show you what my blade looks like when I'm holding this 2%. I'm watching the edge of my blade. See how the edge of it is off the street a little ways? It's up by about 10 centimeters. I watch that edge, and that gives me a clue of how I'm holding on 2%. Now the challenge here is to hold on that 2% as your outside wheel of the grater is changing in elevation. Sometimes the outside wheel is up on the trimmings, and sometimes there is no trimmings. As you can see, the edge of my blade, the end of my blade, is up off the street a little bit, and that's one way I judge my 2%, but I also just look across my blade. It's also a good idea to blade this berm in both directions. It's pretty well useless to look at your slope meter while you're doing this because of that outside wheel changing in elevation. Now we've finished preparing that berm for the Gomaco, and they are up trimming on the top of this berm. I wanted to freeze this frame and talk about a step that I missed getting on camera. The grade crew drew a paint line at lip of curb where I drew this yellow line on this photo. Then I cut that line with the grater, leaving 2 centimeters for the Gamako to cut out of the gutter. You see, if you didn't do that step of roughing in the gutter for the Gamako, there would be too much material for the trimming head to trim at that point. This is a good example of the subtractive method. We slightly overbuild this berm, and the Gamako comes and trims the contour out to perfect grade. Here's Andre on the skid steer, and he's just cleaning up a little where the Gamako pulled out, you see. There's a good shot of how the Gamako trimmed the contour of that rolled-faced mono. In the upcoming clip, I'm going to show you the step where I use the grater to take away that windrow of trimmings that the Gamako is creating right now. If there's too much to trim off the berm or out of the gutter, the windrow can get excessive, too much for the Gomaco to handle. Here I am taking away this windrow gravel that the Gamako created when it was trimming. I'm actually just doing a pre-cut, and I'll come back and make one more pass and take out that little bit that's left there. I do this pre-cut sometimes just to so I can get more level when I'm in doing the next cut. Okay, here I am on my next pass, and I'm just taking the remainder of those trimmings that are left behind there. I want to emphasize something with this freeze frame. You see where I've marked the top of berm, and I marked the gutter with yellow paint where the bottom of the concrete curb will be located. It's important not to contaminate the grade in this gutter area, because that would change the depth of the concrete curb. You see, the Gamako has already trimmed that area out. The trimming head has cut the gutter out already to a precise grade. So you want to try to leave it exactly on grade. So when I'm doing this, I'm always watching that gravel isn't trickling in there, you see, and that you're completely cleaning it out of there. And that's why sometimes if there's a larger windrow, I'll do like a pre-cut like I did there earlier, just to take some of the windrow away first. I'll talk a little more about this in the upcoming clip. As I walk along here with the camera, you can see the nice contour of the rolled faced mono that the Gamako has trimmed out. If there is a skid steer on site, in these corners, I will just leave this windrow of trimmings, and I'll ask the skid steer with his smooth bucket to just back drag this windrow out. Seems to work a little better that way. It makes less labor work to clean it up afterwards. Now the inside corners and the straight stretches I'll get with the grader, but the outside corners I'll just leave for the skid. Well, here's Dylan and Rob, and once they're finished doing their plate tapping, the Gamako can go into concrete pouring mode and pour this rolled mono. The gutter area will have to pass a density test. I hope you found this video interesting, and would you like, subscribe, and leave a comment.